So last minute, I did decide to try Throne of Liberty. In short, I'm not really in the mood to play Lost Ark or TFT right now. And with the amount of conflicting conversation about this game, since it has gone through a lot of changes and iterations, I decided I wanted to try it out for myself. So here's my kind of review / overview of the game so far. This game has a lot of questionable default settings and keybinds. Honestly, the first thing you want to do when you boot up this game and get into it is go through these. If you played other tab target MMOs, you're going to feel like this game is really awkward. One of the big changes I had to do right away was the one where if you hit a skill, it targets the closest enemy. And there's obviously a lot more. I use a G502. I put a fair amount of things on my mouse. I definitely moved things around. And I absolutely took their keybind off shift so I can use it as a modifier for skills, because I mean, that's crazy putting something on shift to me. Shift will forever be a modifier, not an actual skill for me. Also consider turning down your graphics for the sake of frame rate, because you are going to have situations where there's like hundreds of people on your screen at once. After adjusting your settings though, it's your very classic tab target MMO. But instead of having kicks and silence, you have a counter key. Default keybind is Q. It is a very essential part of the combat design, as it guards you from damage, you have a following up counter attack, and also you recover MP. It's basically a little quick time event on screen on top of the mob. You'll see a little purple circle. But this isn't a skill that you can just spam, because it does require stamina to use, and yeah, you have a limited amount of stamina obviously. Which there are other things that use your stamina. The first thing is activating your fursona. Like WoW, you have a travel form where you just turn into an animal and run faster. But there's also one for swimming, and there's also one for flying gliding. It is a very limited flying, by the way. The flying is the one that takes a little getting used to. It feels a little wonky because like your directional control goes off where your character's facing and not your camera right away. If there's a setting I missed to make that feel better, I would like to find it. I also just wish you went faster in your travel form. Oh, I also should mention that like if you hit direction plus the counter, you actually have a dodge roll as well. And then the last thing that consumes up your stamina is a like 2004 grappling hook, where like there's just random hooks placed around the world for no real reason. Unfortunately, you just don't have the freedom of grappling around wherever you want, however you want, like TFT. So the leveling and questing experience is overall very standard. Purple quests are your main story quests. If you lock in on that, that's going to be your fastest route. Every zone does have their own side quests. Those are blue. What is neat about this game is they're all area bound quests basically. Once you unlock like the waypoint zone in the area, all the blue quests just pop up in the log for the area. And then when you leave the area, they're just not there anymore. But you still keep your progress. It can be a little annoying when the quest requires you to leave the area, but then it leaves your log. Which then later I found out if you hit that little star, that favorite thing, then that puts down your normal quest log that persists no matter what area you're in. But also it puts all the markers for that quest on your minimap. So basically if you're going to clear out an area quest, you're going to actually favorite them all. Overall, I think the leveling pacing was pretty good. You started off with a good amount of skills, so you didn't really feel like you had nothing to do at the start like most MMOs do. And overall, it's just a good looking world to go around and experience as somebody who just plays a lot of old ass games. So now's a good time to talk about a few types of content that are in this game that are going to be a big part of your life. Starting off with events, they're kind of a love-hate relationship. They are scheduled for the top of the hour at certain hours of the day. They might be an area mission or a boss. They can also be PvE or PvP. Look for the text in front of it. If it's blue, you're safe. If it's not, you probably are going to be twerked on by a bunch of 50s. If it is conflict or guild and you're in that area, you might want to get out. But the bosses do give endgame loops, so it is something that is a big part of your endgame. And even like you can get it while you're leveling. Though there is this one where the final boss is to have everybody in the area dance, and it's basically unclearable because you just have a bunch of bots that would just attack it and kill it. It's kind of like the meme about the chair in Boondocks where like one person throws a chair and everybody just goes crazy. That's how it is when you see one person throw a spell, everybody else just throws at it. Overall, the concept of events are good because they bring everybody together to work together or against each other and just make the game feel actually massive. It feels like everybody's there. The downside being, yes, if you can't be at your computer at all times of the day, you're going to miss out on very important events. At the end of the day, it is designed to condition you to FOMO log in and do the events. Dungeons, on the other hand, they're very simple. 6 people go in, you kill the bosses, you get out. There are going to be some bosses where most people have some sort of role to do, which also can absolutely have a wipe mechanic on it, basically. It is nowhere near Lost Ark levels, but it's nowhere near as just kind of brain rot as WoW. But man, we clearly did get a lot of WoW players because man, there are so many no mechanic Andes and people are just afraid of doing anything. It's quite annoying. But to get loot from the dungeons, there is a currency that you get every day. At the end game, it turns into basically having 3 runs a day. But you can stack that up for almost like the entire week without overcapping. Contracts is another thing where you can stack them up weekly basically, but they are basically zone quests that are very, very beneficial. They're going to give you a lot of materials for this game's honing system basically, and they're also going to be your main source of weapon mastery, which are just these little items here that you use. You can hold 5 contracts at once, and you basically want to pick 5 for the same type of mobs. As long as you pick one contract in the page, you can refresh the page and try to get something that matches better. May it be a mob type or a different type of reward. And if you ever see a quest with a purple pouch, do that because it can give you endgame gear. Open world dungeons are these little gates you're going to see across the map. Through contracts and other stuff, you're actually going to get abyssal tokens. When you kill things inside of there, it consumes some of those tokens to get your loot basically. This is going to be a good source of upgrade materials and also just raw weapon drops. Things are a little beefy, so you're going to want to group, and basically this is just your group chaos dungeon. You just turn off the brain and go kill things. Beware though, once this turns into nighttime, this will turn into a PvP zone. So if you're trying to min-max endgame, you're really not going to want to interact with any of those things that I just mentioned besides events until you get to endgame. Basically doing the minimal so you have a ton of dungeon runs that you can do and a lot of contracts you can do, a lot of abyssal coins that you can just grind out when you hit 50. But overall, those 4 types of content are your main pillars of progression in endgame, along with just PvP stuff. Which arguably guild and PvP are the most important thing in progression actually, which we'll talk about later. So Throne of Liberty does have an upgrade system, a lot like Lost Ark honing system, but it's more like advanced honing. You'll be earning these enhancement items either raw or you're going to be able to craft them through farming out whatever materials you need to make them. And it's like advanced honing in a sense that you're always making progress. There's no fail. It's just, hey, you fill up a bar and then it goes up. Also, when you switch gear, it's almost like a soft reset every time too. For example, you cap out your green, you feed it to your blue, and then you get like a +3 blue off the bat. And then you do the same thing going into purple. So absolutely cap out something before you feed it to the next because yeah, you're going to want to save up on those tokens. Additionally, you're also going to be farming books to upgrade your skills, passive and active. And then when you get deeper into the game, there's going to actually be min-maxing weapon traits, which is the random rolls that are on items as you get them dropped. And you can extract the trait off one item and put on another, and that's how you're going to kind of min-max that system. Traits are the most pay-to-win system since you can actually just buy everything right off the auction house. And if I recall, there's actually more to it, but I'm just not there yet. So Throne is a game designed around PvP and guilds. And the truth is, yeah, you're going to need not only a big guild to make meaningful progress, but you're also going to need a very active guild. You're going to want to have large group grinding, you're going to want to try to get control and have the benefits of controlling an area. In short, they'll be adding the arc bosses. The arc bosses drop best in slot weapons. And it only goes to the best guilds. I don't know how it works, that's just how I'm told. Cannon said when guilds finally start selling them, they usually went up for like $1,000 to $2,000 US. This is why people have started to call this game more guild to win. Even though yes, paying to win absolutely makes your guild stronger, but yeah, having a strong and powerful guild is going to be very key. Me on the other hand, I've experienced most of this game as a solo player. And yeah, it has been pretty rough. Like as a solo player out in the world, I probably picked one of the worst combinations, which is crossbow dagger, which is just all single target and also a huge mana hog. But yeah, I've gotten to the point where I know if I really want to get serious about this game and make real progression, I'm gonna have to get into a big guild, a big active guild. Of course, this game is pay to win. I mean, Lucent is a currency that spawns in only through swiping. Yes, you can get that Lucent from the whales by selling things on the auction house to them. And while it is common in the TL space for people to say that yes, a free-to-player can keep up, this is pretty much true with every game. This boils down to one question, which is at what cost? At this point in time, I don't have a definitive answer on this, because the gauge for this is really how much am I gaining from grinding IRL than I am in game. And with a game like this, it's pretty hard to put into numbers. And that is because the big thing that's going to bring in a lot of Lucent is RNG on top of RNG. Because you're going to be farming like 3% weapons, for example, but then that 3% weapon has to roll the right trait for you to extract and sell that for a big amount. In short, pay to win, yes. How pay to win, I don't know. Now, since this game has a rock, paper, scissors system, it deters the idea of a one-man army, but it is still pay to win. So if you have dull scissors and pay to win diamond scissors, well, yes, they're both going to cut paper, and they'll both lose to rock. But when we got scissor on scissor action, suddenly diamond's going to have the advantage over dull. So here I want to give one warning to new players and just kind of a overall complaint about the game. Previous in this video, I mentioned that you use books to level up your skills and then you're using those items to level up your weapon mastery. These are very powerful and long-term commitments. You only have two ways to really switch weapons. The first being that you just had to farm it all out again. The second is that you buy these tickets that let you transfer some of these things over. Now going through your questing experience, you will get some of these free, so you will be able to do this kind of once. So my warning and advice is to try out weapons early and then stick with them, lock in. And if you're more of a solo player, you probably shouldn't be like me picking double DPS. You will be spending a lot of time in Party Finder. I wish I could pick up a third weapon easily and switch to sword and shield so I can actually just tank, because like 90% of the parties I see there are looking for tank. But since I can't do that as an off spec, I just don't want to do it. Eventually, once I had these capped out, yes, I could work on other weapons, but right now where I'm at, it's kind of griefing myself. So if you want to live the easy life on grouping and party finder, definitely pick a tank or healer. And at the very least, don't be a no mech Andy DPS. No, I think Throne of Liberty started off with a pretty decent launch. Yes, on Steam charts we're only seeing 300k, but this is a game that also launched on consoles. No, I don't think this will be as extreme as the first Ascendant was. Steam actually had the smallest player base out of the three. I have a feeling that's not quite the same with Throne because MMO Andes generally are just PC players. My gut tells me that we are the majority, but I don't know for sure. Either way, I think it has had a pretty healthy launch. With that being said, I am a little concerned about the future of the game. And it's not because the game is pay to win, because let's be honest, all these games that we're playing these days are really heavily monetized and pay to win. I really do think that the decline of the game will ultimately revolve around GVG and just how much control that gives a guild or two to a server. With the best in slot weapons being basically locked behind a guild, that is going to kind of just feel really bad for the rest of the server. And depending on how dominant that guild is, it's going to create even a bigger gap. And the truth is, like, people say they want competition, they want to fight, they want to struggle, but then when they actually hit that adversity and they just kind of get shit on, then suddenly this is something they don't want. And a portion of this is because in gaming culture, and especially MMO culture, we're really about min-maxing, we're about the end goal. And to have a guild control best in slot until they get it all done and then they're finally ready to sell it, I think that's going to give a lot of people the feeling that pay to win once had. Because the most extreme version of pay to win was something that you could only get by swiping, but in this game it's going to be basically something that you're going to be extremely time gated most likely if you're not in that top guild. And I just don't think your average MMO Andy is going to take that well. I just don't see it as something really good for player retention. We'll just put it in like a wait and see scenario. So if I would have to rate my time with Throne of Liberty so far in this first week, I'd say it's like an upper mid game, like a 6 out of 10. And I do think that score could go up and down. I think it can go up in a sense that maybe GVG is really fun. Maybe once if I get into a guild that does it, maybe I enjoy it a lot and my impression of the game goes up. My main concern is that it will go down in a sense that like the nature of a free-to-play game. And what I mean by that is like the progression that you're on is always a roller coaster, basically putting you into a false sense of security. But then you hit this point of like just cock and ball torture. Examples being like doing elixirs, doing transcendence, the honing from 1600 plus in Lost Ark. They want to get you very invested in the game before they really show their true colors. And then when it gets like unbearably bad, then they do a soft reset and start the whole loop over again. That is overall just the nature of a free-to-play MMO. But it all really just depends on how aggressive that is. Overall, if you have interest in Throne of Liberty, I suggest you try it now while it's still fresh and in the honeymoon phase and while we still have a lot of people for sure. Where the game goes, I can't say for sure, but I can always say that the launch period is always the most fun of really any game. Any game that requires a lot of people, the launch is always just the best time. It is generally when a game is the most populated and also a lot of the people are still learning together. And that really wraps up, I think, all my thoughts about the game so far. Since this is a review after a week, maybe if I'm still pretty active in a month, I'll do another follow-up. And that about wraps it up. Let me know what you think about Throne in the comments.